I'm Luke Story. For the past 22 years, I've been relentlessly committed to my deepest passion, designing the ultimate lifestyle based on the most powerful principles of spirituality, health, psychology, and personal development. The Lifestylist Podcast is a show dedicated to sharing my discoveries and the experts behind them with you. Amanda, this has been a long time coming. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you today.
Thank you for having me, Luke. I really appreciate, being here, and I've heard a lot about you, and finally we get to meet.
Yeah, we run in similar circles, I think, in the fringe of the fringe in terms of the alternative health world. And you're always someone who's in the conversations that I have with the people with whom I like to have them. So I'm really excited. So you're in Canada, which is why we're not doing this one sitting here in Texas in my loft. Whereabouts are you? And I'm so curious as to what your experience has been over the past 3 years. Because our perspective here of Canada is like, oh my God, what is happening? We feel, I can speak for everyone I know that's American. We feel really bad that things were spinning so out of control, apparently, but that's from looking on the outside. How's it been? How is it now? Where are you?
Well, I'm in Northern Ontario, 2 to 3 hours north of Toronto. I'm on 53 acres, beautiful forest. And, I wanted the homestead lifestyle, at least modified to still be able to run businesses and things. But it was very difficult. I think your aspect of what you picked up on is probably close to true, because we have a smaller population compared to the States, obviously. So we're spread out as well. And we have very different laws, like provincial laws and then the federal laws. And so, like, similar to what you have with the States. But a lot of people are really just compliant. They don't ask questions. They don't want to get in trouble. They don't want to rabble rouse. And the compliance was really a bummer for me to watch everyone just eat it up and consume the propaganda and the agitprop that came with it, because it wasn't just your usual fare. It was TikTok dancing nurses and all kinds of actors and actresses coming on and trying to sell you the solution, right? So it was pure agitprop, and it's really surreal. It was the whole surreal experience. And being someone who can see, the second it hit, I called it. And because of that, because I was very casual about it at the beginning, I'm like, okay, this is the flu, guys. The flu is detox. You guys are overreacting. There can't be a new virus because there are no such things. So just chill. You want to come in my store, you can cough on me. I don't care. I'm not afraid of germs. Okay. I know how strong I am, and I'm not the living dead, because germs only will infect or change dead, dying, and damaged tissue, never healthy living tissue. Right. So I'm cool. I'm good even with bacteria, blah, blah. But that got me gang stalked. The violence that came at me, it was amazing. It was not what I would have expected of just like a really casual post of like, don't worry about it, guys. I'm like, okay, but my grandma, but my this, and
Right.
And it just still persists even today. When I go out, I'll see the occasional person in a mask, and it still shocks me but here we are. I don't know where people are at, but I think they're starting to suspect something is up, because there's been way too many other changes going on.
Yeah. I don't really have a realistic perspective, I think, because I'm in Texas, and also the circles in which I run are free thinking people, So it's like I don't know what the rest of the world's up to, but sometimes when I travel, I was just in LA recently, and I saw some people like jogging outside, 85 degrees, clear sunny day, wearing a mask, and I'm just like, whoa, the trauma-based mind control of this whole 3 years is, I mean, I don't wanna laugh at people's trauma, but it's like it's actually just hard to even conceive of the level of psychological damage that the programming has caused. I mean, notwithstanding even the disruptions to small businesses and everything else that's happened, the economy, and such, but just like thinking about, man, people's minds have just been so twisted up, and the further we get away from it, the more my perspective leans into, I don't actually think anything really happened other than people being mind controlled, in mass, you know? But that's interesting, your perspective of Canada, just thinking about, I mean, there's a general kind of perspective of Canadians that they're very polite and just sort of passive, and Canada doesn't go to war. It's just people are chill and easygoing and kind of settle with the status quo in contrast to some places in the States. I mean, the whole Texas, don't tread on me. And, like everyone has firearms, and the populace, at least a certain portion of them, do not like to be effed with by the government. So that's interesting. A smaller population, a more docile population, and heartier efforts at totalitarian control and overreach. Like that's a combination for a lot of misery. So my compassion goes out to you and your fellow Canadians that have weathered the storm. It must have been pretty rough.
Yeah, the politics also is kind of strange because it's the classic two-party system, so there's an illusion of choice, and we just vacillate, same as American politics in some way,
Yeah.
where you vacillate between the two parties. But this round, the Liberals just stuck their foot in deep and made alliances with the other far left NDP. So they got more seats and they were able to get more power. And that's always a dangerous situation. A Liberal government longer than one term is just you're guaranteed economic disaster, and then having them handle the pandemic uh was just adding insult to injury. So it was
Yeah.
a mess. It's a mess. And now people are like, oh, you guys mismanaged and did it wrong, and judging and whatever. It's like, but we called it then and you didn't listen then. So, you know, it's all well and good that you're shaking your finger at them now, but the damage is done, and it's still ripple effect, like fulfillment is happening right now, where we're seeing, economic strife, and people are almost in shell shock in a way. They don't even know how to socialize anymore. And it's really odd going out. Even now that it's warming up, people are still, I don't know, it just feels different. And I totally know that many awake people left Canada. And I contemplated it, but I'm very loyal, and I feel like this is my place. This is where God put me for a reason. And I'm here to do whatever work I'm here to do on behalf of the divine. And if I'm to move, then I'll be moved, right? And it
Yeah.
shouldn't be of my own will, my little will. And so here I am still amongst
Wow.
the mosquitoes
Wow.
and the black flies.
And do you operate a brick and mortar business still?
Well, during the whole fiasco, I was heavily attacked, I guess if you want to say, or I was fined, and I had police coming often to the store, and it was very invasive. And not only that, I couldn't trust people anymore, because if they got wind of your opinion, it's like they would call you in, they would report you, and they would, write frivolous reviews that made no sense about my business, and try to, diminish the good things that I was doing. And I thought that was very unfair. So my response to that was just to go completely online sales and close the physical store to the public. Plus, I moved into a PMA style, a private membership association, because the rest of the government was trying to stop me from doing everything else that I was doing, which is making natural remedies.
Right.
And it's interesting because it's made me look at the world very differently. That we do have private capacity. We don't need to contract with the public entities, because that gets us into trouble. And just learning how to operate in the private, operate businesses and interactions that way. And that's how I've gone forward, probably for the
Awesome.
past couple of years now.
Okay, cool. Good for you. Yeah, that's it's always my next big area of focus is how to disassociate myself from the government as a fictitious entity with a social security number and an all caps name and the whole thing. Many people listening will be like, "What are you talking about?" But it's a thing. I haven't been able to do a podcast about it just because I got to suss out who's the right person and kind of get my head around it to tackle a big topic like that. But yeah, the PMAs and this stuff is becoming more prevalent. And I do know personally one friend who has extricated himself from the whole system and has a different kind of passport and is on paying no taxes and on this whole other trip, you know? And I think that sounds so radical to people because from the moment we're born, we have this birth certificate that is essentially like a stock that the government owns, and we're like a product that's owned by the government. And because it happens so early on and we have no say in it unless our parents were extremely on point and didn't get us a birth certificate, but we're just indoctrinated into that system. But the whole thing is actually just made up. This thing we call the matrix. It's like if you were just living off the land, which you probably wouldn't be able to do legally because the matrix is so thick. But let's just say your parents lived in the woods and you were born in the woods, you wouldn't be subscribed to any of this. You would just be living out there like a deer or a bear. But there's this grid that's kind of been superimposed across all of these continents, and we're indoctrinated into it to such a degree that we can't even imagine that there's another way to exist on the face of the earth outside of that. But there is. It just takes some, legal acuity and study and a number of different steps, which I'm eager to take. But the PMA is a really good start. So good for you. I want to really talk to you about DMSO, which is something I've been using for, I don't know, God, probably over 10 years or something. I got your book here, Healing with DMSO. We can see that on the camera for those watching the video. And I'm super obsessed because I've found it useful, but I didn't know until I got this book and started following your work that there were so many other applications. So I do want to get to that. I'm just reminding myself, don't go off on too many tangents and get lost from the topic that you really want to talk about, Luke. But I do want to mention your involvement with the end of COVID, because I had Alec Zeck on the show, a mutual friend of ours, and that actually aired today at the time of this recording. And so I just want to get your perspective on what you think about that project, what you're doing in it, what's your involvement, et cetera.
Well, I'm one of the producers and I've done quite a few interviews. For example, I interviewed Cal Washington just on the legal side of things.
Oh,
And
cool.
yeah, so it's a lot of content and it's in chapters. So it's enough that it will be presented in a bite sizes, so it won't overwhelm people. But I just downloaded the details today because I think we finalized things. And I think we're at 90, about 90, 91 presentations. I have to double check, but it's a lot of material. And the goal is to sort of lay out how this all happened piece by piece, discuss those aspects from truth, and then move it forward into where we do need to go moving forward to prevent this from ever happening again in the future. And that was really one of the main goals of the project. I'm interviewed as well in many different, I think I'm in maybe 10 or 12 different spots in that. So it's been a lot. It's been a lot of recording. A lot of work and editing has been going into this, but it's coming together really well. So I'm
Awesome.
excited for the launch happening on
Awesome. I'm
June.
stoked. And I think this recording we're doing right now should come out around June 20th, around the same time when this is kind of in the middle of its launch. So we'll put a link to that in the show notes, you guys, at lukestory.com/DMSO. DMSO. Yeah, I'm excited. It sounds like a PhD course, in like
Yeah.
not only what happened, but I think what you highlighted that's so important is how do we not comply with this sort of nonsense again? Because it's one thing to look back and go, ooh, we see all the holes in the story and we see all of the deception and lies and propaganda and manipulation and all the things. Okay, cool. Even if someone's just waking up to that kind of in hindsight going, oh man, I knew something felt off. I didn't know it was this bad, but even being armed with that information doesn't necessarily prevent it from happening again because a new threat will be manufactured like it always is, and people will become afraid and comply. So it's like you can't the way I look at it is like you can't tear a system down that is so embedded. Like this system is just it's been here for too long, thousands of years. The players running the show aren't going anywhere. You think of like a Kissinger or Soros, some of these characters, these figureheads that I just see as just so ultimately evil. And you think, well, they're in their 90s, they got to die sometime, and then maybe some good people take over. But then they have kids, they have offspring that they indoctrinate into these systems, and then they take over. It's crazy. I saw something the other day, like I don't want to misquote her, but it was something Chelsea Clinton had said, speaking at an event and just, we have to get everyone vaccinated or something, just craziness. And I'm like, hey, I have compassion for her for being, born into this just corrupt, evil family, first and foremost. But I also hold her accountable because she is an adult and makes her own decisions. And I'm thinking, there's no way she could have defected. It's like you're brought into that and subjected to God knows what abuse along the way. So it's like that side of the polarity or duality is not going to just magically disappear. It's a matter of like tipping the scale and waking enough people up so that the power of truth and the power of love becomes more prevalent and is the driving energetic force of our continued evolution. So I love that part of it, and I highly encourage people to explore the end of COVID. Before we get in, one more thing before we get into the DMSO stuff, I've been kind of on the sidelines of the alternative health scene for a while, and one topic of conversation that's become really interesting to me is the germ theory and terrain theory model. And I spoke with Alec about it on the show that came out today at some length, and think got a clear explanation for myself. So I wanted to see kind of where you came into that understanding and what your explanation of it is, because it pertains to so many things, but most specifically pertains to the psyop that we experienced over the past 3 years, right? And this whole, was it from a lab? Was it from this? What if there's not a thing? That's kind of my question. And why did the flu disappear for 2 years, almost over 2 years? The flu flatlined for the first time in recorded history. And then this other thing was attributed to people getting ill, et cetera. So the whole thing is just too scammy for me. And I think at the root of it, to get out of the noise, is understanding the fraudulence of virology and the whole way we look at the human body and what makes us sick and what doesn't. So maybe you could just wax poetic on your perspective where you sit right now with all that.
Yeah, in 2016, I started to question the existence of viruses, mainly for a few things, but my growing up and my education in naturopathic medicine and all the holistic knowledge that I was absorbing, there, especially traditional Chinese medicine, there was no place for contagion. And in our historical texts, that's not really a concern. Contagion was only a myth, and it was used for political reasons. And once I found Dr. Stefan Lanka and his explanation of really how the germ theory got a foothold in, our cultures, it was all born of a fraud. And once I connected those dots, I realized that my hunch was right. The knowledge I learned about homeopathy, isopathy, the pleomorphic lineages that we have in our bodies that help us to cleanse the system, those are all natural aspects of us that are not to be killed. They're not supposed to be destroyed. They can't truly be destroyed because they're like the Ouroboros, the snake that eats its tail, because the seed inside this pleomorphic cycle inside of our bodies, even when it's done its job and it goes back into these little tiny dots, that contains the seed for the next growth cycle to begin again when there's a need in the body to cleanse. And even the term immune system was manufactured by the very same people who were creating the false germ theory ideology and the vaccines that go along with it. So you see, it was like a big story that they wanted to tell people to keep them in fear, to keep controlling them, to move political mountains, and to essentially imprison and enslave mankind. And they could do it with all of these different fears. They figured out our psychology enough that they could get away with it for this long. This is like a couple hundred years now. But we're waking up to it. We're starting to figure it out. And it's because one of the reasons is because of scams like the pandemic, which just basically took the flu numbers and made it into something brand new where there was nothing new. And two, by taking the knowledge of our history and burying it, but really taking the understanding of our bodies and giving it to experts, making us who knew about our bodies, who knew about folk medicine, who were empowered how to treat ourselves and what we needed to do, by chasing out those healers, doing the witch hunts, putting them in jail, making it illegal to use herbal medicine and other natural remedies, and then to filter the intellectual idiots, as I lovingly call a lot of the MDs, hyper intellectual idiots, into the schools based on the Flexner report, which basically was going around trying to say, here's how we're going to do medical school. And if you're not licensed, then you can't practice, you can't do anything. The only law will say the only medicine is our medicine and our methods. It came from bullying and it came from lies. And then we've been living a lie all this time and generations. So now we have to break free from it. And really, if you just study the science, I know it's hard for a lot of people to read studies because they use their own language, but if you just look at it like with a really critical eye, what are they doing? Think it through, like the methods section. They have never isolated and characterized a virus ever because they can't, because they're not what they claim to be. And you can't even take the claim of the DNA strand or RNA strand that comes out of these viruses. That's all generated. That is a computer model generation. It has nothing to do with them pulling out like a DNA strand and like breaking it down into little pieces and making sure they've got it all right. That's never been done. They haven't proved that they could isolate this way outside of a cell and put it into a healthy body and make them sick. In fact, every contagion study that's been done has shown that bacteria, viruses, whatever they're calling, even some of the other fungal forms or mycal forms, don't cause a contagion event. So where's the science, right? You have really poorly done science that those who watch television will claim is science, but they've never read it. They don't know what they're looking at. They're basically just repeating propaganda. And the issue is that we do get ill. Obviously, we do express symptoms, but they told us that the symptom is the disease rather than explaining it. The body has these cleansing systems, not an immune system, and the cleansing system helps to remove any debris that's not welcome, balance the terrain, balance the pH, and ensure that the cells are rejuvenating properly for maximum homeostasis, rather than they say, oh, symptom means you have a disease and we have to suppress those symptoms with the drugs that we've made for those symptoms. And what happens is it looks like magic. And so this is how they've gotten away with it, because they
Oh
can
man, yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah.
they can
That's
wave their magic
interesting.
wand, right? Oh, I'm good now. Look, isn't that amazing? What a heroic doctor. Let's stand aside and clap for them, right? But meanwhile, what they're really doing are hurting people. They're actually making their health worse. And so they're getting all this false heroism when it's really, they should be in jail. I mean, ultimately, because they're crimes. Because if you understood the elegance of this system and how everything is connected, and so say you have something going on with your foot, well, that could be because of your hip, or you have a skin issue. Well, that could be your liver, or you have a hearing problem. That could be your kidneys, right? And they don't make these connections. They just have specialists for everything. So they have basically broken everything down into all of these little bits that make no connections for people. And that's exactly the opposite of holistic medicine. It's deduction and reduction to a point where nothing makes any sense anymore. And they are trying to explain it away through math and modeling. And so we get the math and the modeling and the cartoons. And that's literally what people think is reality, cartoons. But there's been not one picture of a virus ever made. Any of those pictures they claim to be a virus. I think Ebola is actually a worm. that famous picture. Some of the other pictures are just endosomes or exosomes or cellular debris. But the big flaw is they have dismissed the cytopathic effect. And that's what Dr. Lankoff found out. He said, oh, wait a second. They're taking tissue out of a body, they're putting it in a dish, they're adding all these chemicals into it, they're adding other nucleic acid particles into it. And then they're saying they're growing a virus. But really, it's just a sick cell, and sick cells produce these particles of decay, and they take those particles and they claim they found some kind of new particle. It's scientism, it's a dogma, and it is not scientific fact whatsoever that viruses exist. They just don't.
Yeah, it's it's a religion, it really is. The scientism, it is the most defended religion on the planet, I think. It's just it's crazy to me as I create these podcasts and share people like you with the world that the level of deception of the public is so astronomical and so multifaceted. I was just watching a film last night called Level with Me, and it's a documentary about this fake space programs and all this stuff. And I'm watching that and I'm just like, and we'll put that in the show notes, by the way, guys, at lukestory.com/DMSO. I'll put a link to that. It's free on YouTube. And I'm watching that, and people are sharing their opinions, right? Like, oh, I believe the earth is flat. I believe it's this, or whatever. Um, and much of which can't be proven. But what was absolutely proven was that all these rocket ships and pretending like we're going to the moon and all of these explanations of like what space is and what the earth is. I don't know what the truth is, but I know bullshit when I see bullshit, right? It's incredible. And when you look at medicine and its areas of science, as you've just described, like the birth certificate, like our servitude into this matrix of civilization, it starts at birth. And so because I think it starts at birth, it becomes integrated into the ego, right? Into the persona. So these beliefs start to become part of who we think we are. And when those beliefs are questions, it's received by some as a direct affront to their existence, right? It's not just like, oh, you're picking apart one of my beliefs, Amanda. But if I'm so strongly adhered to that belief to the point that I'm integrated with it as a part of myself, and then you threaten it, you're actually threatening me, right? And we saw so much of this over the past 3 years. It's just it's just crazy. I can't believe it. Like I can't believe how deceived we've been about so many important facts about the human experience. It's just mind boggling. I mean, it's like you got to laugh at a point. It's just like wow. And something interesting about what you just laid out there, and thank you for a nice compact a description of this model. It was only a couple or a few hundred years ago that the vast majority of human beings believed different things about the nature of the human body, about medicine, about health, about the cosmos, about the nature of reality itself, right? So we think myopically, I think, as citizens of the earth, that like, oh well, medicine's always been this way. They've always believed this. The cosmos, the solar system, all this is that's what we've always believed. And then you look back not very far, and everyone on the planet thought something else, right? And then somehow these really intelligent entities entered into the picture and jostled their way into positions of power and influence and went, hey, we have this new story. And it's a really new story. And in many cases, erroneous and deceptively, deliberately deceptively erroneous, but we're just so close to it in the timeline that it's difficult to see. It like destroys your whole worldview if you realize, like, wow, everything is a lie, or at least much of it. So I don't know. I would be depressed if I couldn't laugh. All you can do is talk to people like you, share the conversations, let people do some research and see what they can figure out. So thank you for that. And it's something that I'm committed to covering more on the show, specifically that topic, because here I'm doing all these episodes about health and biohacking. And I mean, I say stuff all the time like, yeah, I love ozone because kills germs because the germs make you sick. Like, I'm part of this belief system. So I'm just starting to kind of get unplugged from that matrix and think about things in a more broad and open-minded way. Tell us a little bit about your healing journey too. I find that people that are radical thinkers and shakers and movers in the world typically have their, dark nights of the soul that they go through that kind of empower them with passion and information. What's your journey looked like?
Yeah. It's been the wounded healer path mainly. So I've had to experience a lot in order to really feel it inside of me, so I can understand, what's happening, and hone my intuition. And however it's set up for my personality type has been really a wild ride so far. And the last few years, well, the last decade really, I had some injuries done, when I was still, so after school, I basically lost everything. I went through like a really deep, dark night of the soul. I've been through a few, but that was like where I lost everything, where I had to be like almost homeless because I had to feel what it felt to be completely unsupported or feel unsupported, and that it was all on me. So I had to grow up. I had to become the parent for myself. And through that process, which is completely empowering, and I learned, a lot, obviously, about health and what this world's about, but mainly, the journey's been a struggle because of the injuries that I went through, particularly with root canals and dental work and
Oh,
cavitations.
yeah.
Um, Really problematic, and so many people suffer with this. And then the long of the short of it is that um, I'm into the last layers of this next cleanse, and then I finally found the dentist that I think will work for me, and hopefully I can heal, the things that I've had to keep up on top of for, the last 10 years, 10, 12 years almost now. Um, which is, meant that as much as I was working and as much as I was present for people, in the background, I was suffering a lot because I would get migraines often, and they would be like full body migraines, and I wouldn't be able to function for a day or two. And so this sort of thing happening over and over again. And then my lymph nodes were getting infiltrated by all the toxins, and breast was getting involved. And so there was a lot there, but it's just kept me propelling forward into more and more information, remedies, solutions, herbs, plants, people, everything. So I think that one thing I've come to learn is that actually through a book I have here, Archetypal Medicine. This is by Alfred Ziegler. Yeah. And it's a nice perspective because it states that really your health and the disease state are one and the same, because you are simply going through transmutation all the time, and you cannot grow without that little bit of stress or that little bit of pressure. And this is telling you or teaching you a lot, but also it's formulating your journey. It's part of your journey, and to not reject what you're experiencing, because we just want the nice things all the time and we don't want the not nice things all the time,
Totally. Totally.
right? And when I was practicing Buddhism, which I did formally for a number of years, a lot of it was about suffering and about how to alleviate suffering, but also that was through being all right with the discomfort, like owning the discomfort, sitting in the discomfort. When you're meditating for 6 hours, your legs are gone, like they're not even there anymore, right? So you are okay with it. You become okay with the bug landing on your skin, and you don't need to react. And it teaches you this inner peace where that nothing in the external can really hurt you or touch you. Um, and it was very powerful for me to go through that. So it's been quite a ride. And yeah, it's totally taught me, how to be a really good practitioner and also a good parent. for my daughter going through all the things that I had to do, and then see having a natural child, who has never been to a doctor, to see how incredibly robust she is. And I don't need to take her to a doctor because I didn't have her poisoned at the beginning, which is why they keep having to take their kids back, because they have ear infections, throat infections, skin issues, sleep disorders, mood disorders, all these things. It's because they got vaccinated when they were a baby, or they got the K shot, or they got, the ointment in their eyes and they didn't connect with their mother, or they got a C-section, or they had, some sort of womb trauma or whatever. Like, we're just, the conception to birth story is full of trauma. And we wonder why, we have these problems and autism through the roof and all this stuff. So it's told me a lot that why I've struggled so much throughout my life is because of what the doctors did to me in infancy and my youth, and that I was indoctrinated to think that I had to have these vaccines all the time, and to the point where I was a good little girl. So if my mommy said it's time to go get your booster, I'd just go myself and go get a booster, from the doctor. I didn't think anything of it. I thought I was being a good, obedient person that was there to, serve my community and like this sort of thing. That's part of the indoctrination, right? And then I started to clue in that this is a false, because this has set me up for my teeth falling out and all kinds of problems with my body, and my tonsils being removed and all this kind of stuff that should never have happened to me. I mean, to the point where I had tubes in my ears, and one of the grommets, they said, bore a hole, and the hole wasn't repairing itself. And so I would have had to wait for a few years till I was 16 for them to do skin graft operation on me, but I wasn't old enough. So in the meanwhile, they scared the crap out of me by saying I could never get my head submerged in water, and therefore I never really learned how to swim. I was afraid of water. I was even afraid to take a shower. This is the fear, and the things that they do to children that affect your whole life. I mean, just like what they did with the pandemic, these things affected your whole life, no matter if you fell for it or not. Where you moved to, your whole communities fell apart. All your patterns of your natural routine were thrown up in the air. You lost friends, you lost family. I mean, the recourse of what they've done is so evil. It's so, you can't even put the words around it, what's been done. And they've been doing this all along. They've been stealing away our life force like this all the way through. And really, it just comes down to the way that they've approached medicine as really a cult, and also as a measure of control and of stealing away your power, so you don't even know what's going on, so they can tell you what to do. Now they're the authority. If you don't listen to authority, then you're XYZ, you're irresponsible or whatever. I mean, the courts are rife with this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
You get a really terrible mother who wants to steal the kids from the father story, right? And he's like awake, she's not. And there was tons of this, I'm sure more even now. And they use all of these sick tactics to rip the children from a natural parent. It's demented. And so as we've gotten into this, descent here, we can only hit rock bottom. And I think we're almost there before we bounce off the bottom. And hopefully we get back up there again, where we shake it off and remember that we're a family, and that the evil people, who I don't think are even related to us, to be quite honest, or they don't seem to act with compassion or love towards us anyway, that they're not the authority, that they don't have the power, that they manipulate us to take the power from us and use it against us as a weapon. And so that means it's us, it's up to us, it's in our hands to stop it. I know it seems big and crazy and whatever, but they're using us, and they actually need us energetically for their survival. And as we learn, as we grow from this, we're going to see a big sea change coming. Even if it's just 10%, 15% of us, it's enough that we can turn the tide. So I'm looking forward to their reign being over, and us, building a new story.
Me too. Well, the one thing that's encouraging is when parents are awake to this stuff and create organic, natural kids like you've done, I mean, those kids are gonna have such a different experience of life and reality and are eventually going to impact culture positively, right? If they can survive the scrutiny of being different from the masses of the other kids, right? But that's always the encouraging thing to me is like all my friends here are having kids. We're working on having a kid. It's like I think people that are conscious need to have a bunch more kids, it's like and don't torture them and don't allow them to be tortured and poisoned and cut and burned and whatever, all the shit that they do to these poor babies, myself and you included, it sounds like. Imagine how different one's life would be if they weren't circumcised and ultrasounded and shot with all this poison and shit when they come out of the womb and the disconnection from the mom. And there's just like the trauma is so vast. And even just the absence of that trauma, I think, is going to just give someone a huge leg up in their ability to thrive and to affect change, because it's a consciousness thing. It's like, they say politics are downstream from culture, but culture is downstream from consciousness. Everything is downstream from consciousness. So if you're a conscious parent, you're raising your kids with a spiritual understanding of their place on earth, what the earth really is, what reality is, and not allowing them to be indoctrinated, that's going to have a massive impact, because the level of consciousness of culture in general is going to it's going to raise and it's going to spread. So I love that message. And it's really important too, I think, to have some hope. When you start to learn about this stuff, it's pretty gnarly. I mean, we go through our interpersonal dark nights of the soul, right? Physical problems, emotional problems. I have a lot of issues I've overcome in the past, and then your life starts getting better, and you do the work, and you heal all the things, and then your awareness starts to open up to the nature of reality, and you start to see the truth. And it's like, God, I worked on myself and have gotten to a certain place of understanding. Now I'm able to see like how gnarly the rest of the world is. And then there's like other stages to go through where you come to terms with that and find your place and, find the best way that you can help affect change starting within yourself. So I love your perspective. All right, let's get into the DMSO stuff here. I always find that, when I start an interview, it's like I have a topic I want to cover, but I really want to get to know the person and their perspective too. So I apologize to the audience that thinks I'm doing like a clickbait and switch on them when I title something one way and it takes me forever to get there. There's just so many interesting things to talk to people about. But as I said, I've got your book here, Healing with DMSO. And something again I've been using for a long time, and I think kind of in the fringes of alternative health. Some people are aware of it, but I know there's going to be thousands of people that hear this conversation that have never heard of it. So let's just start with the basics. What is DMSO, and what are its origins of use?
Yes, well, it's dimethyl sulfoxide, and it's come from trees. I mean, basically, it contains organic sulfur, and it's not new or anything. It's just that back when it was identified as a solvent, it was like a perfect solvent, and that's how it was used. Um, and so over a period of time, so the first sort of person was a Russian scientist. It was in 1866. So his name was Alexander Saitchev, and he isolated it. And he noticed it wasn't toxic and it had like a garlic taste. And he thought it was, really controversial actually. And then it actually started to become tested in all kinds of studies and things going forward. But it really wasn't until 1963 when a research team who was spearheaded by Stanley Jacob, an MD, he, which now this comes from the Kraft pulp process. So it's actually not that hard to extract, except there's a lot of pressure distillation, so it's a little tricky, but it's a sulfate process in craft pulping. So they make what's called a white liquor, and that breaks the bonds between the lignin and the cellulose. And so that's where they get the DMSO. So literally, the DMSO holds the lignin and cellulose together, which is the strength of the tree itself. And so think about this strength and what it does to us. It strengthens us. It strengthens our tissues. It strengthens the connections between whatever we're calling cells here, because we also have to question all of biology at this point too. So we'll just tongue in cheek some of the terminology here. But really, it is the substance that can treat the most things of all out of any substance that exists, which is really quite profound without doing tissue damage that is for example, you can take tissue and you can use it as a preservative and it won't alter the tissue permanently. It will always return to its normal shape. So it's used in transplant surgeries. And so its main claim to fame was with pain. I only learned about it in school because they taught us in sports medicine that it was used for pain. And I didn't want to go into sports medicine, so I thought, I don't need to know about this stuff. Who the hell cares? There's so many remedies. I'll just do everything herbal or homeopathic. But then when I had my store, I started to investigate it and I found it extremely powerful. And I made like a really big video about it because I was so excited. I went into a deep dive and I read like 50 studies. I was in shock of what I read. I mean, we're talking burns and arthritis and even things like Down syndrome, healing Down syndrome. I mean, I didn't even know you could heal Down syndrome. Strokes and head injuries and like really strange diseases like scleroderma or certain types of amyloidosis. That's a very famous one with DMSO. I make a bunch of blends for things like toothaches and an afterburn sort of gel that really soothes the skin, like you get sunburn. So it's like 300 ailments at least, not more, right? So
That's yeah, I mean, that's the thing that's so fascinating about your book, because I've only ever just used it, I guess, as a solvent. I use DMSO when I wanna drive something into my skin. So that could be like a CBD cream or, transdermal magnesium or something like that, just like if I want it to penetrate, because I understand that at least it does that, but I'm reading your book and there's stuff, and we'll go into a lot of this stuff, but, for your pets and this and like all of these different ailments. So that, of course, leads me to the question of like, well, why doesn't everyone know about this, and why isn't it everywhere? And then, of course, my answer to that, and I'll see what yours is that it's very inexpensive and you can't patent it. And it seems like when a substance is discovered, whether it be made by nature or made by humans, that they tend to get either demonized, repressed, or both, because the powers that be won't be able to profit from it or control it. It's like those are the things that get my interest, most of all. And I think that's why I'm like, okay, I gotta deep dive DMSO. I gotta get into this. Is it present in all trees? Like any tree that's made of wood essentially has DMSO in it?
Yeah, and also in the air or ocean side. So it's part of the natural sulfur cycle. So if you like just were walking by the ocean, you'll get wafts of DMSO. You'll just be breathing it in because it's one of the steps in that cycle. So certain algae and things put it off. So there's quite a few life forms and even foods that contain DMSO as well. So it's very, very natural. It's sort of all pervasive in all kinds of different life forms, but the majority is in like more hardwood trees, or even like a lot of maple trees, that sort of thing. That's where the extraction comes because there's already an industry. There's a pulp and paper industry. So it's a waste product. They don't use it for anything for that. Comes away from that. So then they sell it to companies and they purify it, take in any of the residue white liquor out and run it through, activated charcoal and purify it to sort of like a pharmaceutical grade. So it's a clear liquid, completely transdermal. I explain in the book there's like 3 ways that it kind of opens the skin barrier and gets in. And it is a carrier. It does carry all kinds of substances that are low molecular weight. And if it's too high of a weight, you might feel it trying to go in, like some essential oils. You'll kind of feel that stinging.
I've made that mistake with DMSO before. I'm like, "Oh, something's good on your skin, just put DMSO with it," and I definitely have. I probably with essential oils, yeah, I put something on that was a bit strong, and I mean, it didn't hurt me, but it's
It
a
won't.
little discomfort. What
Yeah, you
about
might get redness or burning or tingling. That's kind of normal.
yeah, so, does my, transdermal magnesium oil application make any sense? Is it adding any effect by using a DMSO roller first on my skin and then putting that oil in?
Yeah, I actually make a 50% magnesium oil with DMSO as a
Oh,
product.
no way.
Yep. Yeah, very,
Cool.
very popular. It actually takes the itch away from both products, which is fascinating because magnesium oil sometimes can itch, especially in
Yeah.
females with more estrogen. And with DMSO, sometimes it can itch. But together, they have a nice synergy. So they tend to be less irritating with one another. And you will get better absorption for sure, and utilization and delivery. So it doesn't just stop with the barrier part, with the transdermal aspect. It's also helping internally work with water to transfer itself quite quickly through the waters. And that's why, you can put it on your finger and in like less than a minute, sometimes it's in your mouth. Like you can taste it in your mouth. You're like, what's that taste? Well, that's the processing of the sulfur, and it's actually putting it off of your breath, which is the only downfall really of DMSO mainly is the DMS breath. Once the oxygen comes off, then you can get that. But I have some solutions in my book about how you can offset some of that. You can use like MMS spray or hydrogen peroxide spray, and it'll dull it down so you can have a social life.
That's funny. I've never actually noticed the odor from using it. Maybe just people were being polite and didn't mention, "Hey, you really smell like, garlic," or something. But I have a friend who's been, working on a skin cancer issue, and so he tries all of these different protocols and stuff, and then he recently did a run of using DMSO internally. Apparently, he was drinking, some portion of it or something, and, not only when he was around was there a very strong odor, but also when he would go away, and he's like, "Hey, sorry, I'm on a DMSO thing, it's driving my girlfriend crazy," and I'm like, "Oh, I'm sure I won't even notice," and I did. I was like, "Holy shit." So, what's the deal with using DMSO internally? I mean, aside from just it's coming out of your pores and your breath and creating an odor that might be displeasing to some people, but what are some of the uses, in terms of taking it internally and safety profile and whatnot?
Yeah, anything above the head, generally speaking, and internally, your higher end dose is about 50%. Although some people have done some real kamikaze things and they're fine. But just for safety reasons, that's the upper level. And usually I suggest 1 teaspoon in 4 or 5 ounces of water or juice a day as your internal dose. If you're just generally treating pain or you're working on maybe some arthritis, because this sulfur helps your detoxifying systems. So it is a master antioxidant and free radical scavenger, reducing reactive oxygen species, which they cause a lot of chaos in the body, which can lead to too much cell debris, which need to be pocketed away. Therefore, you get cancer pockets. And it is just the smell part changes with different people. I find like some people are more toxic than other people. So the way that the body's processing it, sometimes if it adds, like if you're really oxygenated or you're like, say you're on a hydrogen machine or something and you're getting more hydrogen, more oxygen, then you might not smell as much because you're making more of DMSO2 rather than breaking it down into this byproduct that gives the odor. So, because MMS, a lot of people are a little more familiar with that, which is its cousin. DMSO's cousin is in a crystalline form, and a lot of people take it for like muscle building or healing their gut or doing certain detoxes, that sort of thing. So that's a sulfur crystal, and it's DMSO2. It has two oxygens onto it, so it acts a little bit differently. So it'll grow skin, hair, nails really nicely in that format. DMSO will too, but MSM is really absorbed well by like all the skin and tissues and that sort of thing. So like healing your gut with it is really helpful. Healing ulcers, you can use it that way. Any type, I mean, literally any ailment, you're going to want to use it. And there's just different protocols, which I have lots in my book on how to apply it for all those different conditions. And then the synergy that it has with other herbs or other medicines, even like they even use it in some places with chemo. Not that I recommend chemo ever, but they know chemo's poison, even they know. They're like, their goal, they think they have to kill. This is the mistake. We don't kill, but they think they have to kill, and that's the solution. And so they want to kill less. So they add DMSO into it so that there's less chemical and more action of the chemical. So that's why people who are on medications have to be careful with DMSO, because it'll upregulate your blood flow and delivery of the drug. So you'll get more drugs, so you get more bang for the buck on drugs. So say you're on a thyroid medication, you want to use DMSO, you can, but you may have to titrate down your dose of your thyroid medication so you don't overdose your medication. That's where people have to be aware of what they're doing with their mixing. And the only troubles we've ever seen with DMSO were people who did really weird mixes like that, or were on really severe levels or high levels of like psychotropic drugs, and wouldn't stop taking DMSO. I don't know, so I guess not well mentally, and kept taking DMSO and killed herself that way. But that's like an extreme case, and it's the only case we've ever found that anybody ever hurt themselves with it, like permanently. So, so it's very safe.
In your book, there are just, I don't know, probably dozens of different remedies and preparations, and you make some of these preparations, which is helpful. I've being someone who has a hard time reading instructions, I'm looking because I'm like, oh, I have this thing or that thing, I'm going to try it, and then I read some of it, and it's like it's very detailed in terms of like, okay, this many milliliters of DMSO to this much water, and this and that. It seems like you were very mindful with this book in terms of detailing the protocols and not just being like, take all you want and put it all over. I mean, it's very intentional. Where were these different protocols derived from? Is this like personal experience or through the history of use of other people that have been using it therapeutically, or what? Where did the different treatments kind of come from, I guess is my question.
Most of them I just made up. On trial and error and just knowing medicine. And when you're someone who actually manufactures medicine, like you understand how to mix things, how to do the alchemy of things, then after a long period of time, you just know. It's like being a chef, right? Like you know all your ingredients, you know how they cook, you know the chemistry. My whole background is chemistry. I know how they're going to mix. I know how they're going to last. I know they're going to stay. I know how they're going to degrade. So I think I sometimes take that for granted, that I have that, and it's just
Yeah.
part of me, right? So I just don't even question it. So I just go, oh yeah, here's your doses, and then I'll go look up a study where they maybe did something, right? Like they used a certain type of percentage for scleroderma, as an example, right? Okay, and I'll look at another study that uses this percentage, and then so from that research, I'll come to a conclusion that this is the correct amount to use or percentage to use. And then I just would make the product myself, test it on myself. I did for quite a while before that book came out. And then that's where the recipes basically came from. I think there was just one that I found from another site, the clove for pain. So DMSO is an analgesic, a true analgesic. So it does dull nerve pain, and so does clove. Clove is an analgesic. And that was, I found off some website where she had just crushed a bunch of cloves and put it with DMSO as like a tincture kind of extract, and applied it to pain in the mouth. And it was quite strong and still was fine in the mouth. I think because the saliva starts to dilute it nicely. So that was pretty much the only one that I kind of adapted from someone else. And now I actually make that one because I realize, like, I know people, they can make it, but they sometimes won't, right? Like,
Yeah,
or it's just easier for them to buy it. So then I was like, oh, I should
totally.
just make it anyway for to be available.
Well, that's me, and I'm gonna be ordering some stuff off your site because, like I said, I read the book and I'm like, "Oh, this sounds cool. I'm gonna do that." And then I just get busy, and then I'm also probably not great at chemistry, so I'd just rather buy it. I mean, I have, like I said, the few uses of DMSO that just are easy topically, but if I wanted to work on, like, I'm in the middle of a bunch of dental work and my teeth are super sensitive to cold, and so I was like, "Oh, I bet it would be helpful for that." But I probably won't get around to actually making the proper tincture myself. Be much easier to get it from you. And the thing I was wondering too, like, I mean, I know you do other things for your business and whatnot, but since DMSO is like so cheap, I'm assuming in bulk, it's probably exponentially cheaper than even buying it in small amounts on Amazon. I mean, is it like a viable product line because people can get it so much cheaper? It's not like a exotic, metabolite or synthetic or something like that that's actually hard to come by or hard to make. What's it look like creating products with DMSO?
Well, I mean, I don't know about the sources that I have, like my wholesaler, I think 1 gallon is around $400. So, I mean, it's not that
Oh,
cheap.
okay, okay, because 'cause I'm not buying it by
Um,
the gallon, so it seems cheap to
yeah.
me, I guess.
So one gallon's about, around the $400 mark. So
Okay.
yeah, but it's still affordable. I mean, you're buying like what, 500 mils, maybe it'll last you for a year or 2 years, even for a family. So, I mean, you're using it on bumps and bruises and cuts once the bleeding stopped, and all kinds of muscle pains or sprains, ankle rolls. Like it's very important to have some at least in your medicine cabinet. It can stop a heart attack or stroke. So that alone is like a major first aid remedy right there. Like I know cayenne pepper can stop a heart attack
Right,
or stroke as well, but the two together is just amazingly powerful. So that alone, like rubbing it over the area, if there's a heart attack happening at the time, you rub it, on the chest, on the throat area, wherever you can get it on the person. If they're conscious, try to get them to drink some as you're taking them to emergency, that sort of thing. And they should have it in emerge, but they don't really anymore. I think they had it a little bit in the UK for a while. They have their own version. It's a synthetic version, of course. They can't, it's like
right.
they reject nature. It's like, ew, it's natural. Ew. We have to make, now that one is expensive. That's called Rimzo 50. And it is like $2,000 for like a little tiny amount. Like it's insanity. And that's the one they use in all the studies and labs, and like they use their kind. And so their costs are higher because of using their kind. It's just everything they do, I find very warped and weird, but whatever, each to their own, I guess. But you can
Yeah.
get it from the trees, and it's just as
Right, right.
great.
Yeah, that's the, dominionistic relationship that many humans have with nature, right? Is that we have to control and domineer our way through like a bull in a china shop, and it's like, it's pretty good like it is already, you know? But of course, there's profit motives and things like that. So I think it must have been that's a long time ago, probably 5 or 6 years ago, I bought, these rollers, like a liquid deodorant roller kinda thing, a little bottle of 99.9 whatever percent pure DMSO. It looked legit, so I just bought it in bulk, and I still have probably like 8 of them. I bought a massive box because it's like a first aid item, and it's just like something I wanna have around, and I like to buy in bulk because it's just annoying to run out of things and have to use up mental space to remember to go buy it again. But in terms of the purity and sourcing, is there a lot of shitty DMSO on the market? If somebody just goes on Amazon, it's like, "Oh, DMSO, great." I mean, I know you mentioned in the book it needs to be stored in certain types of glass or plastic, et cetera, because of its solvent effect. So what about purity and sourcing?
Yeah, there are lower grades. They usually won't say 99.995. So that's your cleanest. If it says 99.99, then it's a little bit of a lesser grade. But I mean, it's still really useful and good. And I've not seen any negative effects from that grade change. Really, what you'd be exposing yourself to are just some of probably the white liquor aspects, which are like sodium compounds. But again, like really super minor. They use that type on pets, horses. So the vets usually carry like the lower grade stuff. So you usually can get it a little cheaper that way. You can order it, from different countries, and they'll have different price points, but also different purity points that I would be a little more suspicious of, especially you don't know where they've been storing it long term. So I would never store DMSO long term in like any type of non-PET plastic, or having come in contact with those softer plastics, they'll dissolve, because this is a solvent. It'll dissolve so many things. Like, you can't even put a glove on and then rub it on, because it'll dissolve the glove right in front of you. But the hard plastics, it is completely inert. For the PET, plastics, there's not 1 ounce of reactivity with it, which is fantastic, because once I make my blends, sometimes they go in like some of the bigger containers, and you just can't get them in glass. They're just impractical in glass, a lot of those huge, like 8 ounce sizes and stuff.
Yeah.
So then we use the PETE that's recyclable. So just watch out for the soft plastics. You never want to put saran wrap anywhere near it. It'll literally just, if you can test it, it'll just go right in.
Really? That's crazy. What
Yeah.
are some of the applications for our furry friends, for our cats and dogs and whatnot? You mentioned vets using it with horses and things like that. And I haven't gotten to that part of the book yet, but I kind of bookmarked it for the next time our dog has an allergy attack or fleas or whatever. What are some hacks that we could use DMSO for with our pets?
Well, especially for elderly pets, it's really something you can do every 3 or 4 days. You can apply, you know, depending on the size of the animal. So it's always a size factor, right? So if it's like my cat, like I have my older cat, right? He's 14. He has an old injury from a fisher that tried to take him into the woods. And so he looks like a homie G when he walks a little bit, right? But so sometimes I can see it's really bothering him, and I put like a 30% DMSO gel that I make. It's my sunburn after sun gel. And he'll lay on his back, and I'll just massage him into his back legs and over his belly, and it'll get in the fur and whatever, it's fine. But I'll massage it through, and he'll love it. And then for like 2 or 3 days, he's acting like a rock star and going out and trying to like play with
Wow.
mice and stuff again. So it's
Wow.
really night and day. You can really see the difference in his pain levels. And I wouldn't, you can try to put it in dog food. Dogs tend to not be as bothered by it in food, but cats tend to be like, no, I'm not into that. But all types of animal issues, or just longevity issues, you can use it just prophylactically to prevent problems. And even things like heartworm or these kinds of things. The only time you ever get fleas, heartworms, ticks, whatever, is because they're missing a nutrient, there's some sort of deficiency, or there's some sort of toxin, right? Even energetically, if they're toxic energetically, they'll attract fleas, they'll attract these things. So we haven't even really opened the box on how does this race really work, and how do our interactions with each other really work. And I would say they're more energetic than anything else. And there's triggers that happen that can trigger us into an expression. There's tribal or family kind of lineages that will trigger us. So like whole families will get sick at the same time, this sort of thing. So, we don't even really have a grasp on these sorts of things like fleas and ticks and why these things happen. But one thing I've learned is that you're really working on the terrain, and you're really trying to help the body work its best, have its best life. And DMSO can just assist the tissues to recover faster. So the animal is healthier and lives longer. And of course, same thing with the shots. You never want to do that to your pets. I've had animals live. What people are in shock when I tell them how long my animals live for, because they can't fathom it, because we've been damaging them for so long with the shots that we don't even really know their capability anymore.
Yeah.
So I have all natural everything, and you can see the difference. It's very obvious. But DMSO is just a bonus for them. So dogs, rub it on their ears, rub it on the back of their tail, an area where if you can make sure it's cleaner, or if you want to apply it to paws or you want to apply it to belly, just try to wash everything first, because it does carry in, the unwanted things too, and you don't want that. And just start slow and work up to dose. You can't be allergic to sulfur because it's literally in every cell of your body. So you just can't. You can't. People think, oh, what if I'm allergic? And I have a whole chapter on that in the book. You can be allergic to sulfates. You can be allergic to sulfites. You can be allergic to sulfa drugs, but you can't be allergic to sulfur, the element. And that so if people are afraid of like allergies or this sort of thing, the only thing happening if you get an allergy like or hives is just the body is working its systems to cleanse quickly and to move things fast. So if you put on really strong, like if you put on meat, which is like the without dilution, you might get see hives or thickening of the skin, that sort of thing. But it's temporary, it's nothing to be alarmed about. Very few people will go into any kind of anaphylactic situation. They would already know that they're anaphylactic people anyway. They would already know they have all kinds of allergies because the DMSO might stir up things in their bodies. They're reacting to that, but it's not the DMSO itself.
Got
So
it.
it's very, very
With the application for pets, you mentioned that you use your, sun repair gel that's diluted by 30% or whatever it was. Would it be advisable to do some level of dilution before applying it topically to a pet? Like,
yeah,
say my
definitely.
dog has hot spots, I'm not just gonna take my 99% roller on directly onto the hot spot or something.
They would be fine probably if you did that. But there, I have a dilution chart in the book for a specific reason because there's different dilutions for different benefits. Like the 30% level is the most anti-inflammatory percentage. That's the one that you can use in your eyes. You can use, internally in any way, and for anything inflamed. And then when you go higher, you're getting different actions because there's less water in it. And so, like for tendons and things, you also want more water content because there's not a lot of water content in the tendons themselves. And you want the DMSO to get there fluidly. And then the higher percentages are for more intense issues. So there's a whole range of uses. Ultimately, you start low always. You don't want to shock any animal if that's the first time use, but if it's an emergency, and say they're having a seizure, and your mind's maybe not good, you're freaking out. What do I do? You just want to take some DMSO and just try to rub it on their neck or on their body. It's not going to kill them. It's not going to hurt them at that concentration. It's just if you keep using it too strong, the skin reacts to this barrier breach without enough water, and we'll get that redness and can thicken over time and get like a leather-like sort of quality to it. But as soon as you stop the DMSO, the skin will go back to normal. And that's the one thing I found really incredible about this. It's just, despite what you think it's doing in its alterations, it always returns to normal. And it's like, uh, and it's just so wise the way that it moves through. So, as you learn and feel more comfortable with it, you'll see its limitations. Just like with anything new, you're not sure. There's a little bit of fear, apprehension with some of these things. Totally understandable. So that's why I wrote the book. So you feel confident, comfortable. You just start with lower doses, and then be in a situation where you trust and you know that you can use it on a stronger level, and it's okay.
Cool, cool. Yeah, with the flea thing and pets, it's never really been an issue for me so much in California, but in Texas during the summer, the fleas are next level. And so we've tried, all the natural sprays and natural flea shampoos and all the things. And for the past 2 years, there have reached a point in during each year where we're just like, we have to give her the flea medication. And it just, I don't want to use the term "it kills me" because I don't like to say that, but it's extremely difficult for me to poison my dog so that we don't get a house full of fleas and so she's not tortured by them. So like, an oral medication or the drop on the back of the neck that gets in the bloodstream. And just intuitively, that sounds like a horrific thing to do because you're poisoning the blood of an animal that you love. But it's just like, I don't know, it's a couple times just been the lesser of two evils. So I'm wondering if, do you have any, anecdotal record of someone giving a dog, for example, an internal, like an oral low dose, and having it act kind of in the same way where it repels fleas or stops the reactivity of the fleas or prevents them from reproducing and laying eggs on the skin or anything like that?
It's usually a combo approach. Definitely, they do not like the DMSO. So I would do probably 30 to 40% internal protocol where you can mix it up and then give it orally. Um, so by mouth with some food or something like that to the animal. You can inject it. I don't go in too much into injectables, but they're again 50% is your maximum. But usually you do really low doses of injection. You could try urine therapy, so you could use their own urine, or even the same sex. So say if it's a male dog, then use your urine, not a female's urine, just to not throw off the hormones. But you could even put urine on them, and is it also as a natural repellent. Um,
Really?
yep, you
Wow.
can put it on your, if you have to go out into the bush, you just pee all over yourself. Rock on. But it's an old remedy for all kinds of
That's
ailments as well.
funny.
So
That's hilarious you mentioned that because, our dog Cookie, I love to pee in the yard. It's just like, it's my first home I've ever owned, and it's one of my favorite things, just walk out in the backyard and take a leak. But our dog Cookie likes to cover my markings in the yard. So it's like, if I go out there and pee, she will know and she will come over, and inevitably she will inadvertently try to walk through the stream, because she's trying to get to the spot to leave her own mark. And I'm always like trying to prevent myself from peeing on the dog, but, that's an interesting take that maybe there might be something to just letting her have her way.
that she knows, let her try it
That's
out.
funny.
The problem is when it degrades into ammonia, we don't like the smell. So
Yeah.
you might want to do something else to help their scent. Like, I don't know if you tried diatomaceous earth as one of the natural remedies yet, but that's usually what I use a lot up here for my pets. I put it in the food and
You put
on
in their food.
and sprinkle it on them
Oh,
both.
wow, cool. I'll try that. I'll try that. I know that's what we were using to clean the pool. So I'm sure it's a different
Different
grade
grade.
of that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I've taken it during some parasite cleanses and stuff, the DE, but, yeah, that's interesting. Thank you for that. What about, something that I just skimmed over in the book was, DMSO IVs. How prevalent is the intravenous, application in the natural health circles around the world?
It's pretty much known, I would say. I mean, if I'm trained in IV therapy, and I can crack open my book and there's a DMSO glutathione recipe, I think, in there. So it's known, but it's not celebrated, I guess. It's like just one of those things in the, like, yeah, it's a thing that we use for, pain or injury or whatever, or cancer, like that, but it's not like fanfare like it should be, like it deserves to be, like
Right.
DMSO guys, like come on, like look at the power of this thing. But it's, if you go to a naturopath who does IV, a good percentage of them will probably at least know about it. They might not have used it before or been asked, but it's often blended, and it's used a lot in obviously serious ailments. They're like DMSO with blended with other things, because also it helps the rest of the body absorb the nutrition, and you're bypassing the enteric system, so you can really get some rapid results when you do it through IV. Yeah.
Wow, cool, cool. All right. Let's see. I've got a few other questions for you here. I want to make sure that I don't miss anything, and then we conclude the call. And I'm like, oh, I forgot that thing. Oh, sinuses. You talk about doing sinus flushes, and I know. I mean, just our air is so full of God knows what, and people are reporting to me all the time that they're having sinus issues, and it's something I'm not so much. I think I've healed a lot of my sinus stuff, but in the past I had a lot of sinus infections and things. So, what about doing neti pot, nasal rinse, et cetera?
Oh yeah. It's really important, the sinuses, because these are caverns that help us cleanse. All of these roots that have an exit, they're very important to us. Not only are we accumulating waste from pollution things, and the mucus has to continually cleanse it out, but it's about the way we breathe through our nose, because we're not supposed to be mouth breathing at all. We're supposed to be nose breathing constantly. It's when we sleep, when we work out, when we are just sitting, watching something, whatever, close your mouth. You're supposed to be breathing through your nose. And again, the medical cartel has done a huge disservice to us by removing our HEPA filters from our bodies, which are our tonsils and our adenoids. And so many of us have been damaged like this. And it's just sometimes I get so angry at what's been done, like, how dare they continue to do that? And to this day, they just keep recommending these barbaric surgeries that are completely unnecessary, misunderstanding the purpose of the glands themselves, and then causing all these more accumulations inside the body where the filter should have caught it. The filter should have dealt with it and purged it. And then once those are removed, you can get all kinds of other inflammatory problems inside the sinuses, which lead to teeth issues, eye issues. You can create polyps in the nose area, in the turbinates, and your life now is different. You're not able to nose breathe. You're not able to sleep the way you need to. You're going to have sleep apnea and other problems. And I know they're like, oh, well, the adenoids were big and they were giving me sleep apnea. Well, they shouldn't be that big in the first place. And they're probably that big because they got vaccines and that created the damage to the tissue in the first place. So it's the same problem reaction solution as they continue to do. They make the problem. Then they say, oh, how did that happen? Oh, weird. Don't worry. We've got it for you. We'll fix it, right? This is their
Oh God.
scam. This is
Yeah.
their scam. So you
Yeah.
just don't meddle with it. You don't meddle with nature. You don't meddle with God. You just understand this is perfect. It's a perfect system. You don't need to take anything out. You don't need to cut anything off. It's all there perfectly, and it all has a purpose. Nothing is just this evolutionary falsity that somehow we evolved from monkeys and that came out of the ocean that then what a joke that people
Oh
even
my
believe that
God.
evolution is real is just what? Just think it through. Let's go all the way through your logical conclusions. There are no logical conclusions, so it's not real, right? People don't think things through from start to finish. They don't play with the mind exercises in logic. They need to do that so they can have clarity. So then
Well,
the
it's,
sign.
Amanda, it's so much more work, right? If you go to school and they show you the drawing of the ape and all of the different iterations of the human, and then you're at the end of that, it's just much less work for the mind to go, oh, okay, yeah, I'll take that story. It takes a little more work to go, well, where are the 5 or 6 iterations of the humanoid? Because we still have apes and we still have humans, so the rest of them in the middle are all gone. It's just like, I mean, oh, don't get me started. But yeah, I agree. A critical thought is not only helpful but necessary if you want to make your way through this world without, especially without having, someone ill-informed or ill-willed cut parts of your body out rather than educating you on how to get them to be functional again. Back to the sinus stuff, and it's in the book, but what are what are some of the like types of sinus issues that one could work on with DMSO specifically, doing rinses and whatnot?
Well, if the famous sinus infection, so-called sinus infection, right? See this a lot in smokers and people who are really challenging their sinuses constantly. And you never want to ever use antibiotics for these things. They'll always return with a vengeance. So that would be a good practical application for any type of sinus so-called infection or pain in the sinus. Using a neti pot, of course, not a plastic one, get like a nice one that's ceramic, and proper dilution. You're still making your saline solution because you do want it to be non-burning, and you're not putting that much in it so that it's really going to hurt the tissues. So, you will feel it, like it will burn a little. Like same thing, I make eye drops in saline. I make it 20% with vitamin C, 20% just plain, and then 40% same thing. And I call them liquid fire because they will burn the crap. And like your initial reaction is wow, but then comes this relief and this cleansing of the eye. So you can use it the same way in the ears. So you can use the eye solution also in the ears. And you can, I've had, I have a sinus condition because one of my teeth that they pulled incorrectly, and then I had to go get it debrided because it was causing cavitations. And then that dentist was also a hack and punctured my sinus with a laser. So ever since that puncture, I get sinus triggered migraines from it. So it begins in the sinus, it goes up to the temple, goes across the head, goes down the neck, goes down my body, and then brings me a lot of nausea as well. And my metabolism is affected. I can feel it in my heart. I can feel it when I move, you know. So that whole inflammatory cycle is a well-worn path in my body. So what I'll do sometimes is just take a drop or two of the DMSO eye drops and I'll put it in my anatomical snuff box. That's right. I have a really nice anatomical snuff box
That
here.
is nice.
Hey, thank you. And I will put the drops in and I'll just snort them basically, just like that, and
Wow.
just let it go in, and I'll have like a moment of blinking and I'll probably blow my nose about a minute or two later and there's some relief. And I'll keep doing that until I reach that threshold where I feel more comfortable. So you can even
Cool.
just snort it if you want to.
That's probably my style. I used to snort things back in my, wild youth. I'm pretty good at it, I think, still. What about, biofilms? You know, if you're having pockets of funk and infection in your sinuses or elsewhere, is DMSO been documented to help break up biofilms?
Well, yeah, like the biofilm is only going to be manufactured because the terrain is incorrect, right? They can't live in a healthy terrain. So that already tells you there's diseased tissue. They're setting up a house, okay? Because they're like, whoa, you know what? Construction crew, we're going to be here a while. There's like so much going on here. And they keep trying to kill us, which is stupid because we're actually doing a job for them. So we're going to make a biofilm so we can stay longer because these idiots keep trying to kill us with antibiotics and stuff. So now we're going to make it harder for them to kill us so that we can help them. And so the goal is not really to even worry about it so much, is to get to the next level of why, like what's going on with my tissue that this has happened. And then work to use things like DMSO, MSM to strengthen the tissues, find out where the missing nutrients are and supply them, especially tissue salts, which is really under noticed, like DMSO, and essential. They are essential nutrients, and most people are deficient in these essential 12 salts. And then do some enemas or things that will help your liver upregulate and work better and fix your hormones and these sorts of things. Then that doesn't last. Like it won't. Those biofilms will naturally be dissolved by the body because their purpose is now not needed. They aren't required. Now, if you have someone who's very, very sick, okay, they've got biofilms, they've got all these microinfections all over the place, they're just full of parasites, whatever, their terrain is really in a bad state. I totally understand the need to just get some relief and clean that out and chase them out and that sort of stuff. It's totally fine. DMSO definitely can be part of that, without real suppression. So it'll strengthen the tissues, it'll get rid of heavy metals, all kinds of metals from the body, which might be the cause of why that's happening. That's a really big cause of most of these problems are the metals and the microplastics, and the xenoestrogens. Those are kind of like the top ones. That, and I include glyphosate and that kind of stuff in the xenoestrogen
Yeah.
camp. Yeah.
So
So,
just let me interject there. Did you say that the DMSO can assist the body in removing heavy metals?
oh yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
yeah.
Wow,
Yeah, like,
cool.
I think they've shown, like, the sulfur itself binds with mercury, lead, aluminum, cadmium, arsenic, and nickel, and then it'll come out through defecation.
Holy shit. No pun intended.
Yeah.
That's cool. I didn't know that. I don't know if it was in your book. Like I said, like I kind of like use your book like, oh, what's the thing I want to work on? So then I go read that particular part, which is, how I got to the sinuses and some other things. Have you heard any reports of people, you were talking about how you can use the drops in your ears, any positive impact on tinnitus or as some say, tinnitus?
Yeah, yeah, some, DMSO and tinnitus, if it's mechanical, yes. If it's cochlear or if it's, like, deeper into the inner ear or it's brain, because it can be coming from the signal, right? So where
Sure.
along the signal is the problem? Like where is it coming from? Is it from like outside damage or is it from inside damage? So I really found cold laser was incredible for tinnitus. I have the Spooky 2 system, and they have a cold laser adaptation, which just like little looks like little earplugs. You can plug them in your ears, and the red light goes in. You can do it in your nose as well, and you can actually heal your sinuses through doing that too. So yeah, I found the laser to be really, really one of the top ways to deal with tinnitus.
Cool, cool,
And I would probably do a combo where rubbing DMSO on the back of the ears, doing the drops, doing that. So, like, what you're trying to do is tell the body, hey, we're on to this now. Can we heal this now? I'm going to give you some direction. Will you take it and run with it? You know, so you could even do homeopathic that's specific. Say you get a lot of wax buildup, or you're getting uh, wind, you're sensitive to wind or something. So you'll look up different rubrics or symptoms that you have, and you can match the homeopathic to what you're feeling. So, add that in as well. And then you're really directing the life force toward the ear and saying, I know you're working on the liver right now. Sorry, buddy. Or, I know you're
yeah,
working on
yeah.
digestion right now, but let's go here. And that's why you don't want to throw too many things in your body all the time, because you have one life force, and it's the life force that decides when it's going to heal a particular area. And so if you're working with natural medicine, your goal is to try to hone that in a direction where you're not going against the grain of what the body would naturally want to do anyway. You're just trying to gently urge it to and help it for something that it can do on its own and would do if everything else was fine. Just get that done now. So it's like prioritizing or reorganizing the priorities of the body. So you don't want to go, okay, now do liver, okay, now do that, now do this, right? You want to try to figure out what organ system you're working on and focus on it. Then you get a lot of success.
That's great advice for me, and I'm assuming a number of people listening, 'cause I go so hard with this stuff. I think sometimes I'm probably counterproductive because I just, I learn so much from people like you. So I'm like, oh, cool. All right, starting today, I'm going full DMSO and working on my sinuses or whatever. And then the next day I learn something else and it's for the liver or whatever. And I just kind of, do a shotgun approach rather than a sniper approach. So I think that's good advice. I'm going to definitely take note of that. Well, man, I think as far as the DMSO stuff goes, we've covered a lot here. There's a couple more things I want to talk about with you. And again, I'll remind people the show notes for everything we're talking about are located at lukestory.com/DMSO. And we'll put a link to your store and the products that you have and stuff like that, because I think it's a lot easier if I would use DMSO much more effectively and frequently if I just had some formula that were already made. Because the likelihood of me reading the book and going, okay, let me measure the amount of milliliters in the, I mean, I'm just not going to do it. I'm just too lazy or busy or whatever, maybe a combination of both. So I like that. And we're going to put that in there. Um, Something else that you mentioned earlier in regard to the dog's fleas is the application of urine. And many years ago, man, this is probably 20 years ago or so, I got this book. I think it was called Nature's Own Medicine, I think. And it was
Nature's
about
Perfect
urine
Medicine.
autotherapy. What did Nature's Perfect Medicine? Is that what it's called?
Martha Christie's book, yeah.
Okay, yeah. And so I was like, hey, I'm into this stuff. I'd try everything. And I was pretty sick at that point. So I started kind of microdosing my own urine and found that there's a history of this. It's not just some wacky new age thing that came out in the 90s or whatever. Um, but then I kind of did it for a thing and got on to the next thing and just forgot about it. And I don't hear it mentioned that much. But what's your perspective? Well, I guess first describe what it is for people that are like, this sounds insane. And then give me your take on it. And if you have any experience with clients or yourself that have proven it to be useful.
Yeah, sorry. So the title is Your Own Perfect
Your
Medicine.
own perfect medicine. Thank you.
Yeah. And she's right, because it's your own homeopathic, perfectly designed remedy for you. And it can be used for others, but it's really meant for you. And it's your urine isn't waste. I have a lot of videos on this topic on my website, yummy.doctor,
Oh,
and
cool.
people are curious about it. I've been doing urine therapy for a long time. And
Really?
oh yeah. Um,
Cool.
it's anti-aging, it gets rid of wrinkles, you can put it in every orifice, you can do enemas, you can put it in your eyes, you can drink it, you can put it in your ears, you can, if you want to snort some more stuff, just some urine snorting.
Oh my
It's
god.
actually, it gives you a real high. The urine storing,
Really?
oh yeah, way better than
Wow.
the other stuff.
I know what I'm putting in my neti pot tomorrow. Well, I
Yep,
think the misconception I think people have about it, because anytime I've mentioned this, I've talked about it on the show before. People are like, "Ew, gross, germs." It's like people think urine is like liquid feces. Like they don't understand um, that it's sterile, right? It's not. I mean, I think maybe the smell of like a dried urine, if you walk by an alley and you smell urine, that ammonia smell, people
yeah.
associate it with that, but subjectively, in my experience, it wasn't really a big deal other than just mentally because of the programming and conditioning and thinking that it's a waste product and that it's full of, germs or something like that. So, what's what's the historical relevance of it and maybe explain to people why it's not as gross as it sounds?
Oh, it's ancient. It goes way, it's one of the first remedies ever. It's as old as the hills. So, I mean, yeah, it's actually back when they used to believe it was the key to immortality. That if you imbibed if you looped and you continued to imbibe your full day's urine, you would reach immortality. So it's an elixir of youth. It's an elixir of healing for the body. It's structured water. You structure it by your own cistern, and it even says in the Bible to drink from your own cistern, and that this is a gift from God, that you are able to have remedy inside of yourself. And so if you get stung by a bee, for example, within 20 seconds of your bite or sting, you will have the antidote in your urine. Say you have an anaphylactic reaction to something, you will have the antidote within 20 seconds inside your urine. And you can drink some of that immediately and you can apply it topically and you will alleviate your your symptoms.
Whoa.
Yeah. So the sting will go away. You won't have any sort of swelling. I've tested this lots of times and it works every single time. So it's
That's
very powerful. And like, say you cooked a steak, right? Beautiful. So good. It was a great steak. Oh, yeah. But then somebody took the steak and threw it in the alley and it rotted there for like, I don't know, a week. You'd probably walk by that and you go, ew, that's gross. Ew, that's gross. Ew, that's gross. So it's the same idea. Like, old pee is gross. I get it. Yeah. Okay. Sometimes. But say you took that steak and then you fermented it. You fermented it and it began to like become its own, medicine, even more concentrated. You wouldn't be like, ooh, ooh, ooh. You'd be like, oh, that's interesting. What do I eat that for? What kind of beef is this now? Right? It wasn't thrown in the alley. It was, so you can do this with aged urine. You can take your urine. I have urine that's 5 years old right now,
really.
and it's my emergency urine. It's almost black. It's incredible. Um,
Whoa.
it's stem cells. It's basically full on stem cells. That's what I'm growing in my own house, in my lab, my stem cells from my own urine because they contain it. And that's why it's an elixir of youth, because you're giving back your own stem cells to differentiate into things that your body is calling for. So I know there's an ick factor. And hey, when
Yeah.
I first started, I had to get over the ick factor too. It's just normal. We're programmed, okay? I think that the thing is we have to separate ourselves out from the reaction. And I teach about developing the second attention, where you're your own witness of yourself. It's not judgy. You're not judging. You're just watching. You're like, oh, that's interesting. Amanda's reacting. Oh, I wonder why she's, like this. So you're the neutral observer. So just observe how you feel, rather than go through the whole reaction. It's like, oh yes, I see my conditioning. Yeah, I see that I was told it was waste. I see that I was told it was I was told it's Satan drinks its own, whatever, it was told by my pastor. So whatever the story is, that's the story. But that's not true. It's just you're reacting to what you thought you knew. That's it. And then, like anything you've come across that you never knew before, you go through these doorways. You learn that it's safer, it's okay, it wasn't what you thought, it was okay to be wrong, it's okay to make mistakes because that's how we grow. It was okay, I was lied to, it wasn't my fault, fine, okay. But now I'm going to take charge of my own health and I'm going to learn about this, and I'm not going to just react and throw it away because of my ego, because you're missing out on something really profound. So you can wash your hair with it. People have regrown their hair. You can get rid of gray hair if you use it on a daily basis. Your gray hair pretty much disappears for the most part, in a lot
Wow.
of people. So especially if you're really healthy, like if you're really healthy and all you got is the gray hair issue, that's just sopped up pretty quick.
That's so cool, man. I'm glad we went into that. It was kind of in the periphery of my notes, and I thought, well, if we have time, we'll get to it. But I'm glad that we're able to cover that because I haven't really. It's been a while since it's been discussed on the show, and definitely been a long time since I've done it. So I love talking about things that inspire people to think more deeply and broadly. You know what I mean? Some of these things we talk about on the show are maybe shocking to people, but I think it's just healthy to open your mind. It doesn't mean that you have to like go along with everything or you have to start drinking your own pee, but it's more about just it's more about the observer, right? It's about like witnessing, oh, why do I react? Why do I believe what I believe? Why do I believe that, apes became people? Is there any actually evidence of that? Or the dinosaurs or the moon landing? All these things that we're led to believe, whether, in the medical sphere or not, it's just like when you start questioning things and you come up against your reactions, I think it's really healthy to see where your boundaries are with your belief systems and your attachments to those beliefs. It's a great just intellectual, spiritual exercise.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And even at the, in the end of COVID, I did my primary presentation is on the paradigm shift. So a scientific paradigm shift is what we're in the middle of. And with these with the shift, what has to happen, so we've been operating in like normal science. Normal science is the general accepted paradigm, so we can actually do the work. So we can work on what we think is true and accumulate data and see if we can get to technologies or get to answers or solutions, right? And then after a while, you get too many just no, that doesn't hold water, that doesn't hold water, that doesn't hold, they build up. And that's the beginning of the shift where we now have to configure and look at the original baseline belief systems of the original science that we formed our base from, that we created the normal science out of, and go back to the basics again and say, okay, we assumed these things to be true so we could work with normal science, but unfortunately these are changed now, and now we have to reinvestigate what we thought was true. And that's why we're looking at germ theory now. That's why we're looking at all the things we thought about medicine as a whole, the way the body has been identified and characterized. All those things are now under scrutiny because we're finding way too many elephants in the room. And also, we're not progressing to a place of homeostasis. We're actually getting worse, more chronic illness, more the higher death rate, all of these problems. So the whole point of science is ultimately to know, but also to solve problems, right? And we're making more more problems. So we better go back to the blueprint and see where we went wrong. And it's exciting that we're doing it, but that means you have to question what you think you've known your whole life. And for some, I know for some, they will take the lie to their grave. I know that that's how it happens. It's always a gradual process. The younger generations are more open-minded. They are able to hold some multiple theories at the same time in their heads, this sort of thing. So, it's with the generational changeover that all these things happen. And so our goal now is to really be in charge of that and make sure that the next generation is learning how to critically think and do proper science and question authority, because they've gotten it into such a rigmarole with the schools that you're really just trying to achieve brown nosing rather than your own individuation in the halls of science, right? You can't get grants or tenure or contracts if you are being different. And that's a real shame because we're losing true diversity of thought in this manner. And that means communism, which is based on equality, which is a lie. There is no such thing as equality. I don't know why people are banging on about it. They don't even, again, they haven't even thought through what is equality. What does that actually mean? Well, it means if someone's a high achiever, that's now you're not equal to the low achiever. So now you have to have a baseline of low achieving and bring that higher person down to the low, so you see this in schools, right? Where they're just getting like gold stars all over the place by achieving nothing, and they're getting rewards where it's not warranted. And this creates a lazy individual and also an unintellectual individual. And this is not equality, it's a demonization to a point where we will fade away into chaos if we continue this way, right? And we're seeing that. So now we have to recall our mistake, and it's okay that we're different, and we can not keep pinpointing them all the differences, and judging the differences. Just being comfortable with all these layers to ourselves, right? And anyway, it's interesting times.
I love
That's
it.
all I have to say.
It's when the shift hits the fan.
Shift is hitting the
It's
fan.
it's the best. I always think I don't even know who this famous quote is from. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It's like it's so true right now, right? Because it's just such
Isn't
a
it
shit
Hemingway
show.
or
And
something? Hemingway, the sun also
yeah,
rises.
maybe that's it. Yeah, I quote it all the time and never give credit, so I better learn one of these days. But it's just crazy. The world is absolutely insane. Yet at the same time, I talk to people like you that make sense, right, and have solutions and are moving people towards solutions. And then my faith is restored, and then I keep moving forward. And then I open up Telegram tomorrow and I go, "Oh my God, we're screwed," and then here I am back again in another inspiring conversation, and so it goes, But I do think overall what you speak of, just sanity, right? And critical thinking and intuition and alignment with nature. I think that inside even the most programmed person, there is an innate knowing of truth, right? It's like we can't really arrive at truth often through our intellect because of the programming, but there's an innate intelligence to the spirit and to the body that just knows when something's right and when it's wrong. And the more we can become attuned to that, the more I feel like we actually have a chance of moving forward and seeing a different world. So I appreciate your perspective. I appreciate the work you're doing. Um, and definitely appreciate you reinvigorating my interest in DMSO. And I am committed to integrating this more into my practice, other than just like rubbing it on my back when my back hurts or something. So I'm super excited to start to actually educate myself further on that topic. And in closing, I got one more question for you. Who have been three teachers or teachings that have influenced your life or your work that you'd like to share with us?
Wow. Well, I've had unique circumstances in my life where teachers just show up at my door and kind of move in. um, so there are, a few major ones. One teacher taught me about addictions um, that I didn't think I had, or collections, as we call it. So I would have I love bags, handbags. I just like really cool purses and bags and things, vessels. I like all sorts of vessels. I think they're practical, and I like the design aspect, right? Okay, so I had a huge collection. Not that I could ever use these all in one life. Well, I had used them at least a couple times, this sort of thing, but I was collecting them. And she helped me see my own patterns, that really was a type of addiction. It's not the type of addiction that's going to hurt you per se, but it's still in that realm where we do this. We are trying to fill voids inside of us, whether it's subtle or overt. We're trying to find some sort of soothing inside. And I was doing it in just subtle ways, different ways. But I hadn't recognized that in my own self. And it really helped me to let go of the material, um, letting go of material items and learning about how cause and effect works and how abundance works. So that was that was huge for me to learn that I can manifest abundance with my energy, with my thoughts, with where I'm at. That I don't need to cling to anything, and the more I cling, actually, the more I lose, and the more I become a hungry ghost where nothing ever satisfies and nothing ever fills. And that when you let go, when you release and open into the void, that's when it can be filled again, right? So it's like emptying your cup over and over again, so it can be filled and filled and filled and filled. And that's why you can never really just know. You can't say I know. I always say, I don't know anything. I don't know anything. I want to be empty and be filled, empty and be filled. And then that's how, ironically, um, so that was from Samantha. That was from her. Um, she taught me many other things. That was big. And then I had a gentleman. We've fallen, into different camps now, but I'm still very grateful to him for teaching me um, maritime law, admiralty law, contract law, all the different types of laws, natural law, ecclesiastical law, all of these things, and do like a just come and show me and teach me and learn those methods and things. And I'm grateful for what I learned there, because I don't think I would have come into the depth of knowledge that I'm at now if I hadn't started when I did, because there's a lot there. And so I feel like grounded in some of it. And you have to be really brave and courageous when you're going at these big things of society where you're, challenging governments and challenging banks and all these institutions and things. So I feel really strong now in that because of that layup, that setup. So whatever our karma was, it went how it was supposed to. There's quite a few. It's hard to pick the next one. I have a Tibetan teacher, and then Hiro Ratan Manek is in there too. I'll probably say my Tibetan teacher, he taught me a humbleness, just because you're smart or just because you or have skills, be humble. Like, you don't need to show off. You don't need to have all the attention. You don't need that. You have God's attention, and that's it. That's enough. And to feel satisfied with where you're at, no matter what it looks like on the outside, and to be a loving, giving person. But through all of it, it taught me how to have tough love, like how to say it like it is and be in integrity, and say it honestly and be honest with what you're feeling or how you're trying to express something to somebody. And if it's real and true, then it will resonate with them. Now, they might not appreciate it in the moment all the time, but that's not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to the truth and not necessarily their feelings per se. I mean, you're going to try to be gentle if it's warranted. Sometimes the gentleness approach doesn't work because it doesn't shake them enough. It doesn't rattle them enough. It doesn't unearth them from their comfort zone enough for them to go, no, or like get angry or like do something, which shakes up what they think they know. Right. And so a lot of these teachers, and, I did Vipassana meditation, these sorts of things. A lot of these teachers help hone that in me, where I'm okay with people don't like me or judge me or whatever. It's not to say it doesn't bother me from time to time. I'm still a woman, but like, it's that I don't take it into my personality, or I don't take it into my ego. It doesn't stay, right? It's just something you transmute, and I really like the Ho'oponopono approach. Like, I'm sorry, like doing the tapping. I'm sorry, please forgive me. I love you. I forgive you, like this sort of process where you're going over and you're tapping your body and you're releasing anything you might have picked up that you're holding inside of you. That's kind of micro traumas, really. And just release, release, release. I'm sorry, I forgive you. What's the other one? There's
I
four.
love you. Thank you.
Thank you. That's one. I love you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Putting yourself into gratitude states, right? And these types of methods. So I'd say like those are three really big, important teachers for me that, highlighted that. And just goes to show you the world will be your teacher, and the world will be your parent. The world will show you. And you don't have to feel like you missed out, like, oh, I missed out on this experience, that experience. It can come in the most incredible ways, and you can't even imagine it. That's why you want to let go. You want to let go, let God thing, right? When I let go, I surrender constantly.
Yeah.
And I surrender my will to the divine. I surrender my will to the divine, because I don't want that responsibility. That's ridiculous. That's not my job. My job is to be clear, to be clean and clear and pure. and to allow, right? In that way. And then I'm safe and I'm protected naturally. So everyone's like, safety, 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 all the rhetoric, safety, safety. We're going to keep you safe, safety, safety, safety. It's such a joke. It's just a reflection of the fact that people, they don't feel safe inside themselves because they are disconnected, right? And so they're clinging to the parent, the false safety, this idea that they have to be safe inside their little homes and then everything's going to be okay somehow. And then you're not living. That's not life. Everyone's going to die. I'm sorry. It's just, but death is just a transformation and there's nothing to fear, right? It's just change like anything else. And so the more comfortable you are with all flowing with that change, the more incredible and enriched your life is. And also the more incredible your death experience is too, because you get what's happening. You understand it. This isn't the end of anything. I think a lot of people, they don't have that spiritual barometer. So they cling, like I was clinging to my purses, they cling to all the
Yeah.
things because that's their identity, right? And they're trying to understand their identity. And so they get warped ideas of what is identity. and then you get into identity politics, which is also insane because of the same problem. This is disconnection and this clinging and this fear, right? And so that all of those lessons help me become me now, where it's not that I don't get scared or don't have to, you allow it to go through. You don't claim, you don't say, I'm now an afraid person, or now I'm an unsafe person, or whatever that feeling is. You're like, oh, that's a feeling. Like I teach my daughter, their emotions, their energy in motion. It's just keep it moving, keep it moving, keep it moving. Don't stay stuck in that. Keep it flowing, shake it off, move your body, do what you gotta do, go ground, go outside, get some sun, breathe, get some music going, tone, dance, like get that energy unstuck in you. And then you're now the vessel for the divine that really is your goal here. That's what I feel anyway, is to be that pristine vessel for the light, for love, for truth, for peace, prosperity, all the things that we ultimately do want and what we're all doing, the things we're doing anyway. We want love, nurturing, all these things, right? We all want the same things, but we block them in ourselves because we're so scared. We're so scared to feel the feelings, even if they're uncomfortable, right? So that's, going into the discomfort through all those processes, through all those teachers, being like in courtroom, scared out of your wits, like
Yeah, yeah.
trembling and having to speak up and put a judge on their bench oath. Like, yeah, that's crazy, right? But I had to do it because I had to know the limits. I had to know what's the worst case scenario for me in this now. Okay, it's a contempt of court. Okay, all right. Okay, I get it. I get that. And really play with this reality. And now I feel seasoned in it. So I hope people can take away the idea that everyone's past different. I'm not in anybody's body. I can't speak for anybody else. All I got is me, right? But ultimately, I feel there's similarities between us all that we can agree upon. And this really comes down to love and just trying to feel that and be that and emanate that. And that's the ultimate healing. That's the real healing. I mean, if we could just bottle love, I don't know, snort it,
Yeah,
we'd have it. We'd be
yeah.
good. We'd be done. We'd probably
Yeah.
be, I don't know, maybe we'd finally have freaking hover cars. Are we ever going to get hover cars? I mean,
I
they keep
know,
promising
right?
hover car, but I don't see them.
Yeah, I don't either. We're
So
still arguing about the number of genders. We're going backwards. Well, I love your closing philosophical statement. That was really beautiful, and I resonate with all of that deeply in my experience and just my reality. So thank you for bringing us home with some deep truth there. I appreciate it. Anywhere other than things we've talked about, you want to send people to website, social media, or anything before we check out?
I've got Telegram, Healthy Dose of Truth. I'm thinking about starting a podcast in the same name because sometimes you just want to talk,
Yeah,
just
I
get a
know the
video out of the
feeling.
way. Yeah, like someone else I know. And I think Yummy.doctor is probably like the central hub because you can get to all my other websites from, like, you can literally click on any video, scroll down, and all the social media is just right there for you. That's probably the
Cool.
easiest place to go. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I'm glad we finally got to connect after all these years of kind of being in the periphery of social circles and whatnot. I love the work you're doing in the world and love the info you dropped here on the lifestylist. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you.